Put simply, you see the smiles, not the stress. You see the dinner, but not the decisions that go into it. Today, we're going to unpack the invisible load that mothers carry, and specifically to encourage you to know that you're not alone and also to raise awareness. Everyone, and welcome back to another riveting episode of Women Talk. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a topic that is not discussed enough, and that is the realities of modern motherhood, specifically the invisible load that women carry. Today, we're discussing finding the balance in motherhood, specifically behind this invisible load. And we have two wonderful guests in the studio with us. They are Azura Rahman.
Hi, hello.
Hi. Azura is a mother of three, and she very intentionally left the corporate world to become a stay-at-home mom. It wasn't a fallback decision. In fact, it was a decision that she made with clarity after juggling both roles and recognizing what her family needed and what her personal well-being also required. As well as on the show today, we have Eni Rohaiza Hamza.
Thank you for having me.
Who is a working mum in the corporate world with a young and bright teenager. Thank you for being with us on the show. Okay. I'm very happy to talk about this topic because today we're going to unpack the hidden labor, the invisible load that involves also the emotional weight, as well as a search for balance in that journey in motherhood. So perhaps we can start with you, Azura.
There's a lot to unpack, by the way.
Yeah. And today we're skimming the surface, but I think it's more to have this discussion so that, women out there don't feel so alone.
Of course.
There is a weight and a challenge in transitioning actually from being a working mom to deciding to be at home and taking care of the kids.
It definitely was a big decision to make. And it wasn't something that I did on the fly. I think when I had two children, and they're just about 2 years apart, and I was actually in broadcasting as well. I was a producer and presenter for radio. And
I know your work.
So, it was a job that's filled with deadlines. The show has to go on, regardless of whether the transporter didn't turn up today, or, if the helper at home suddenly decides to go on emergency leave. You are the backstop. Unfortunately, I was the backstop. So I felt like at some point, I'm not a fantastically good worker and also a mediocre mother for me personally. So I felt like when I was pregnant with my third one, I just needed to make the decision to focus on what was a priority for me at that time, and it was raising my very young children. It's been 8 years, and it's been a bit of an adjustment, changes in mindsets here and there, and my kids are bigger now, and that in itself is a journey for motherhood. But I think it's safe to say I'm very settled where I am now, right? As opposed to where I was before. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. We'll unpack into the details of that as we carry on along the show, but. Can you tell us about the perception of, or misconception actually, that somehow the choice to be at home and a homemaker is somewhat easier? I mean, walk us through like a typical day. Now juggling three, I mean, because clearly you thought you could juggle with two, and then it went to three and you're like...
Three was suddenly, crazy. Because, you've got one extra person, outnumbering the adults, so to speak, right? There's no typical day, actually. Of course, the kids go to school and, they come back, they have their activities, you have housework, you've got things that needs to get done. But I can't have a very, how shall I say it, rigid week, for example, even though I have my own things to do and, responsibilities towards other people, like my mother, for example. Because there's always something that happens out of nowhere. And that could mean somebody falling ill or an emergency at school or somebody who needed me right at that moment. So if everything is just too rigid and packed, you're not able to kind of switch hats and, and multitask or do other things.
So that is a key skill, actually, in being able to be flexible.
Flexibility, right. And I'm sure Annie has the same thing to say as well for, her role.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, obviously, but that is to be said with, that flexibility needs to be there. The structure needs to be there first, doesn't it?
The framework is essential, I think. If you have a framework, then you know when things go wrong what you can fall back on.
And okay, so I think there was a little bit of discussion before this as well about how when that transition happens, when you decide to become that full-time mom, mind you, you were juggling that, the motherhood and the career with two kids, and that's a lot already. When you made that transition, did you ever feel that your work then was not seen enough? Because, you know, in the workplace, everyone's work is kind of very visible, right? I mean, that's what you're there. And so we're talking about the invisible load. How did you feel in that transition?
You know, when you're at work, you have colleagues, you have your line managers, you've got your stakeholders, your clients, what so have you, and they see the work that you do. And they'll commend you on the great work that you've done, hopefully. But at home, and I think that's what someone said to me, you know, you may find that your universe has suddenly become much smaller. You know, it's domestic. You know, your audience is your children and your partner.
And your helper maybe, if you're lucky.
Your helper maybe, you know. And that's about it. And I think that's why it became very important for me to understand that I needed to be internally happy with what I do.
Yes.
And, you know, and take stock frequently of what I do, as opposed to having an annual appraisal. Yes. You know, if the week has gone by, if everyone's limbs are still attached, if everyone is happy, if I am happy, you know, if everything's okay, that's good enough. And, you know, and I think it's almost more difficult because you have to be self-aware of the things that you've actually done.
On that note, thank you. We'll unpack more about that, especially in conversations that you have to have with your partner in terms of that acknowledgement of being more seen. Annie, what about for you, you know, as someone who's juggling the career at the moment with family, where do you feel the greatest pressure?
Oh, absolutely. The greatest pressure is balancing my time, my focus, and my priority between job and also my roles at home. But as for me, I have an additional challenges, you know, Azura, back then, when I was raising my child, Edilia, for 12 years, I was raising her alone as a single mother. So that's another dimension, on top of that. So while I was doing that, she was also almost, I suspected her having an autism. At that time, but turned out that after there is some assessment, she does not fall within the spectrum. But the real pressure comes from people perception about, hey, you are a corporate worker, and I was in the big GLC where the expectation, and you are within the cream of the crop. Everybody performs, everybody goes to training, goes for all the extra miles to be on top and on top.
Did you have any other support? I mean, now that I know that as well that we know that you were doing it predominantly alone, did you have anyone else there? Any family? Any?
Absolutely, I can't do it myself. So the word is not managing, right, Azura and Anita? The word is really surviving it. So back then, I was quite lucky. My parents, I moved to somewhere nearer to my parents. So they really helped in between in picking up the kids. But most of the time, I really tried my best to do on my own. So that's actually bad. You need to reach out. Okay, you need to tell people that you need help.
This is a very good tip.
Yes, the word is reach out, and it's okay to be in mess. It's okay that you are unsure. It is okay that you fall, you just break down. There was a moment I truly just let go a plastic bag because my daughter was crying, and I don't understand. What do you want? Because she was in the transition, you see, that whether she's in the spectrum or not, right? So it was really difficult for me. I had to answer calls, and back then I did stakeholder management in corporate com. So sometimes I need to travel to Sabah, Sarawak and Terengganu for a week, something like that. So for a small child, having her mother away because of work is really challenging. She doesn't understand why mama goes away, why I have to stay away with Ato and Wan, you know. So things like that. So the greatest pressure is really when my daughter didn't understand why I have to be away, and I just really have to pick and choose the trade-off that I made in life, you know.
Hold that thought, Annie. Hold that thought, because we're going to unpack more of that in the next segment. There's so much to unpack. Thank you both, ladies, for kicking off this wonderful discussion. Don't go away. We'll be on a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Women Talk, where we're discussing a very interesting topic, and one which I think almost every mother can relate to, which is the invisible load of modern motherhood. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom or you're someone who's also juggling career at the same time, it's a challenge. All right, today on the show with us, we have, once again, Zura Rahman as well as Eni Rahaiza. And they're sharing their experience with us. And we're going to get back into that conversation about how you were talking about how difficult it was to explain to your daughter, a young daughter who couldn't understand, why it is that you had to be away for work. You know, on top of that, there's also a huge mental load in terms of the to-do list at work. Yeah. And then when you come home, you're expected to be a fully present mother. So how did you juggle that? And did you find it challenging to kind of switch off mentally?
Of course. I would be lying if I say it's not challenging. Like I mentioned, it's really not about managing. It's about surviving the process, the stages, right? So back then, I was quite lucky because I have my parents to support me, to help me in managing the emotional stress of my daughter. And to add on, I was doing it as a single mom.
Yes.
But I think the good thing about going through this journey, that it shaped my daughter into a very emotional maturity. She's doing it better than the rest of her peers. So a lot of conversation between myself and her while we try to achieve that understanding. Mama has to go to work, and at night sometimes at 12 o'clock, Mama cannot sleep with you. I have to be on laptop, you know.
Right.
So at times I'll be doing the press release write-ups, you know, after
down to the wire.
Exactly, sound familiar, right?
Yes.
People in mass comm or broadcasting. So those kind of thing, how I manage it really, to be honest, I never switch off. Yes, because as much as you want to switch off and be present, you were always being disturbed by, you know, phone calls, work, because at work, strategic comms, right, especially, you just have all these unplanned things coming out on your way. You have to review, edit things. There were a lot of things in between. So there comes my parents, usually. They will just jump in and manage my daughter, explaining to her, okay, Mama will put more time, this and this on weekend or what. So I always, what I do with my daughter, the conversation usually, I make a deal, I plan better. So both of us, in fact, not just me, become a better planner. So she will negotiate. Mama, why don't we have this Saturday? Oh, instead of you having me two hours, why don't you just finish off your work on Saturday and we can have the whole full Sunday? So I love that.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
How old is she now?
She's 14.
Wow.
She's fantastic. She's my best friend. Really.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, sometimes, and you can actually speak from both sides of the divide, right? They say, oh, okay, yeah, women who have it all, like, okay, this is career and this and that. And when you had to essentially take on the load yourself, and it was a full frontal load with the 3 kids at home, do you feel like that load was shared?
I think initially, when I decided to become a stay-at-home mom, I had comments from friends who were, you know, still in the corporate world, you know, working moms, essentially. They'll say, oh, so many people would kill to be in your position. And I think having that kind of sentiment loaded towards me, and also the fact that, okay, this is what I'm walking away and this is what I'm focusing on, I think I overstretched myself. So I was doing like homemade decorations for my kid's birthday when I was 8 months pregnant, everything homemade, making cookies, making cakes. And you know, some friends, who, you know, my ex-colleagues were looking, are you okay, Azura? You're momming very hard at the moment. It's like, but I had led myself to believe, oh, if I'm at home, then I should be this crazy perfect mother that I wasn't able to be before.
You needed to have KPI at home.
Exactly. And it was really self-imposed. And I think I may not be the only one. I think a lot of women impose it on themselves. But you talk about the shared burden, and what I think I really needed to do from the very beginning is just shout and say help. You know?
Yes.
And there are things where there are days where I just want, you know, my husband to just hear me rant and vent. There are some times where I say, can you please pick up on this, because I'm already so stretched, you know. There are times where I say that I can help her with the English homework, but, you know, I can't do anything for her maths homework, so you have to come in on that. And sometimes during the weekends, you know, he'll know that I've had a crazy week, you know, attending to all the different things, you know, attending every single concert, then he'll take over, you know, then he'll take somebody to the dentist, and, you know, he'll take them out for, you know, a drink, or, you know, go for,
just to give you some bandwidth.
Yeah, exactly. You know, just to decompress a bit. And I think that's very important. So I think the main thing is to not feel that you have to take that burden by yourself. You can share the load.
Now, for the women out there who are really considering making the switch, right? Azura, perhaps that you can share about how you got to the mindset of not carrying guilt of being a homemaker.
I think women are wired to feel guilt all the time, to be very honest with you.
So true.
You know, when I started to get into running and doing workouts, and then that meant, you know, being, you know, literally on the road, running for several hours during the weekend, you know, and I just did a full marathon, and that took up a lot of my time. But I think guilt can be useful, it can be unuseful. It's useful if it compels you to be better at things, but it's not useful if it's making you feel bad about what you do. And what you do is a lot already. And, you know, and when you do things for yourself that you may feel guilty about, you may not realize that you're actually showing your kids a side of you that they can aspire to when they're older, right?
Totally.
Like in your case, it's to be like, you know, a flying corporate eagle flying figure, right? And for me, well, my daughter, she's running cross country now. She was doing long distance running now because not with me asking her to. It's, you know, they do what they see. Right. So I think
and that self-care is important as well. What you're doing for yourself.
It is absolutely. It's essential.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Okay, there's more to this conversation, obviously, and we're going to go for a quick break. But don't go anywhere. We'll be back to unpack more on this invisible load that women carry. Thanks for staying tuned. You're still on Women Talk, and I'm Anita Woo with our two wonderful guests today, Eni Rohaiza as well as Azura Rahman, and we're unpacking a very under-talked about topic, which is the invisible load that modern moms carry. As a career woman and someone who is obviously in a competitive environment, what kind of support would you like, or changes you'd like to see beyond the nursing room?
Definitely from my experience, a daytime maid have been useful in terms of helping me to manage the after-school hours. Like for certain parents or single mothers who does not have the privilege of having their grandparents to help out. So a daytime maid would be helpful. But on top of that, some flexibility in terms of working culture. So in my role, managing a team, I feel that a leader could make some adjustment in terms of flexibility in giving some rooms to the teammates in managing their personal time. You could provide that culture within the team.
Encourage that.
Like right now, we see a lot of organizations that's been doing the working from home, right? So that really helpful. But on top of that, we need to also instill the understanding of boundaries. You know, calling time or being respectful of interrupting family times. Unless it's really critical. So I see that.
Did you have to ever verbalize at any point saying, hey, listen, you know, this is my only time that I have at home with my daughter. You can send me whatever, but just don't expect me to respond. Until working hours.
Yes.
Has that been successful?
No. No, yes. Many no's, a little bit yes. So this depends on the personnel. So some people would accept that better. Some leaders would not tolerate at all. That equals to not performing.
I see. So that's what you're basically saying. The culture has to come to a point.
Exactly.
Where it's kind of like, you know, like in other countries, where it's become culturally the case. Where
after policy, I think, rather than be dependent on one person.
So it starts with the mothers itself, like us, you know, like even Azura, when her experience working. And in my role, leading a team, I have to set the tone. So by actually modeling it, sometimes I do excuse team, I'm so sorry, I need 2 minutes just to check on my daughter. If you need to make a call with your families, please do so, and then we'll get back together. And we can always manage that in a more discipline in conducting meeting. We are aware of the time. So we are actually, you know, killing two birds with one stone, which is we are training our team to be respectful with our time at work and also personal.
You're actually embodying the change that you want to see.
We're pushing also effectiveness as well.
So
it takes
fantastic.
time. But when people see the leaders doing it, everybody follows. shamelessly.
Leadership, and this is why we need more women at the top.
Exactly. We have more empathy, you know.
Yes.
You're actually walking the talk.
I hope so.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Annie. All right, Azura, and can you talk a little bit more about in that transition to your role? What kind of support would you have liked to see a bit more?
I think I mentioned earlier on about how the universe can get smaller when it's become just a domestic universe.
Yes.
I found my community in other school mums. Group chats are
amazing.
Even though if you are like at home, I'm the most scatterbrained person you could come across. So to have mums to remind you, hey, don't forget to make sure that they're wearing a costume for book day.
Wow.
Or don't forget this, and to be your support, to like perhaps be the stopgap when you're unable to fetch your kid from school and to send them home from you.
Have that support.
Or to even just to have, you bounce off ideas and vent frustrations. Because yes, you have your partner, but if he's in a meeting in Hong Kong, he's not going to be able to pick up your phone call saying, why are there's not artwork supplies in the drawer, So I think to find your own community, it has to be proactive. You need to seek them out. Do not wait to be adopted. I think that's very important for any mother, regardless of whether you're a working mom or a stay-at-home mom, to find your community of other mothers. It takes a village.
Exactly. I mean, that's, I think, what is underestimated. And I think to basically wrap up the conversation, the adage has been there that it takes a village to raise a child for a long time. But the modern woman is not a village. She's very alone.
It's just one person job.
And so, I mean, for you, it's leading by example and, of course, pushing for policies. I do hope that more companies actually do implement or come up with them, table them, and implement them. And Azura, as you said, like, don't wait.
Don't wait.
I mean, because sometimes it's an ego thing as well. Like, it's just more like, no, I can do this. I can do this.
That's what people nowadays would call a very toxic mindset. I think you need to grow with everyone else. You don't need to grow by yourself.
It's just women don't even realize that it's happening, actually. And so it's really encouraging that we're having this conversation. So
actually, I need to talk a little bit.
Yes,
because I really appreciate the involvement of, the stay-home mom.
Yes.
Because they have been helping mothers like me, struggling. Really. Thank you so much. They're really tip-top in everything, the list.
And finding that support, I think, is in a community.
It's really good.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
We really hope that this conversation has been eye-opening and that those who have been carrying this invisible load, which is every mother out there, feels a little bit more seen. Whether you're a full-time homemaker or a working mom, let's be clear, motherhood carries a weight that isn't always visible, but it is deeply felt and you can always seek support. So with that conversation, let's acknowledge and support and share this awareness with all our friends and community. And follow at Women Talk TV3, at TV3 Malaysia. Like, comment and engage with us. My name is Anita Woo. See you next time.